Welcome, listeners, to this very special edition of the Career Woman's Secret Playbook podcast. We're celebrating our 50th episode today with our special guest, Kimberly Brock. Kimberly Brock is the podcast host of She's Just Getting Started podcast, which is ranked in the top 1% of all business podcasts. So, guys, come back and join me because Kimberly's going to be sharing her special tips on how to get your business started and also share her incredible story of how she became the phenomenal businesswoman, business coach, and podcast host she is today.
Are you a strong, independent woman who's passionate about her career? Then this podcast is perfect for you. Based on her book, The Career Woman's Secret Playbook, career coach Dr. Dawn Hamby shares the kind of insider secrets you can only know if you've hired, fired, and promoted employees over the past 30 years.
Ladies, I'm on a mission to help busy women just like you create a career and life you love without sacrificing your work-life balance to get it. Come join me as we inspire and motivate each other only as women can and have lots of fun along the way.
With Dr. Dawn's tools, strategies, and action steps, you can unleash your personal and professional power in a whole new way. Here's today's episode.
All right, listeners, as I mentioned in the intro, the whole purpose of our monthly motivation interviews is to highlight the amazing work that's being done out there by women, professional women that are out there really helping other women step into their own power. Now, the women I've selected for these interviews are not only folks I personally admire, but I know they're really helping people. That's why I am so excited, you guys, when I started to think about this series. And I thought, who could I ask to be my very first guest on the podcast? You guys, Kimberly Brock was the only choice. And in a second, when I get done singing her praises, Kimberly, I'm sorry, you're going to have to just put up with this for just a minute. You're going to understand why. You guys, Miss Kimberly Brock, who's our guest today, is not only a phenomenal business coach and podcast host, but she's my business coach and podcast host. That's right. She helped me start my own business. I'll give you some specifics here in just a minute, but let me tell you a little bit more about this fabulous woman. She knows she has to put up with me bragging about her. You guys, she is the podcast host of She's Just Getting Started. That podcast you may have already heard of before because it's consistently ranked in the top 1% of all business podcasts. So the very next thing I want you to do when you get done listening to our interview is to head on over to her podcast and subscribe. I'm telling you what, even if you're not ever sure if you actually want to start a business one day, you need to start listening because she's going to just make you feel better. She just has that way about her. And you'll start to feel like the powerful businesswoman that I know you are just by listening. And you guys, that's how I found her. I was thinking about starting my own business, but I really had no idea where to start. And even though I have entire workshops about confidence, you guys, this was a scary prospect. And so even I wasn't 100% sure if I could do this. Next thing I know, I find her podcast. I start binge listening to all of her episodes. And then when I realized she offered one-on-one coaching, well, I reached out to her and the rest is history. I not only learned everything I needed to know about how to start my own business, but she also helped me start this podcast. You guys, she even helped me brainstorm the title of my book, which, as you know, is what this podcast is based on. So be sure to check out episode 122, you guys, of Kimberly's podcast to get all the details about that and more. So without any further delay, listeners, please welcome Miss Kimberly Brock. Kimberly, thank you so much for being here and welcome. First off, can you believe we did that interview back in 2022? Is that possible?
No, time has flown. And by the way, that intro, I mean, you just nailed that. I don't even know where that came. Did you write that yourself? I'm like, what? She just said that so perfectly and eloquently. I'm
Oh,
amazed and flattered and honored, all of the above, but you are amazing. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
oh my gosh. Well, see, there's advantages to some of your clients being professional speakers. Like, if we can't give a good intro, we just need to start a different business
I
altogether,
know. Well,
right?
you got it, girl. You got it. You had that nailed down. That was amazing. So
Well,
I have
it's
lots to learn
easy.
from you.
Oh, thank you so much, Kimberly. It's really easy. I think the ladies listening today will know that it's really easy to give those kind of compliments when you just have the privilege of working with folks you're really excited to learn from and to work
Mhm.
with. So it's easy when it's heartfelt, and that's another reason I'm so excited you're here. Now, Kimberly, I did remind our listeners that the previous episode was all about how to turn a passion project or your side hustle into a full-time business. So in that episode, I actually went through the steps that I kind of took as I was trying to figure things
Mhm.
out and just kind of
Mhm.
recommendations on how to take that idea and turn around and make it a business. In that episode, I let our audience know that you were going to be joining us to help us celebrate not just this idea of starting your own business, but to help us celebrate our 50th episode, which we're so excited
Whoop,
about.
whoop.
But you guys, for me, it's definitely full circle because this is the wonderful lady who helped me
Oh my
understand not
gosh.
only how to start my own business, but how to actually begin a podcast. So, you guys, one of the things I do want to say, and then I want to turn things over to Kimberly, is, when I first started, I was nervous about, how do I start? And then not only that, when you're first starting, you're so nervous about money spent. What should I spend my money on? But you guys know I've preached this all the time on this podcast that time really is money, especially if you're a solo practitioner. So you really need to think about not just the women helping women concept, but you really need to think about hiring the experts to save you on time and money. And it also increases your confidence when you have someone like Kimberly who kind of taught herself how to do everything. And then she hired the people she needed to hire to get this far. So, Kimberly, I would love to start with that for you to just share your story with our audience. Let us know a little bit more about kind of how you got started with all this.
Well, that is so sweet. Thank you so much, Dawn. I'm just so impressed by you and everything and getting to meet you. When was that? Years ago? Was that a
Years
couple
ago.
years ago?
Yes.
What? Years ago is such an honor, and you just had that glow to you, and I could see that I could just see the fortitude, like, in your eyes, like, you're like, "I'm doing this, I have my career, but I'm gonna be starting this business," and it was just so inspiring to watch you and
Oh,
to now see here we are 2 years later. So, anyways, my story is probably different than yours and maybe for some of your listeners, but I'm sure many of you can relate. So, my name is Kimberly Brock, as you know, and I live in Texas outside Houston. And at the time that I started my first business, I was in Austin, Texas, and I started one with a friend. Now, here's the thing, I started it on the side, just like you were talking about. So, I
mhm.
worked at Dell Computers. I was a sales manager, loved my job. So, side note, you can love your career and start a side business. Okay. You can do both. I think a lot of people think, oh, I love my job. Why would I start a business? Well, spoiler alert, it's because you know you're meant for more.
Mm.
But let's just go back. So I knew I was meant for more, even to where I was that day when I was, working at Dell Computers, and my friend and I were talking, and we were like, you know what, let's start a business. I was pregnant with my first child, and we decided, okay, let's do this maybe right after I have the baby. So I had my daughter Lexi in like October. And then like January of that year of 20, I mean, I was about to say 2020, of 2000, I started my business with my friend. And we
Mm.
started doing what you would now call our pop up shows around Austin, Texas. We sold home accessories and gifts. We didn't have all the awesome stuff at Target, the home goods. We didn't have all
Right.
these dupes of all this stuff. Like there wasn't much besides department stores, furniture stores. People weren't really buying furniture and accessories online or anything like that because the
Right.
online world was barely getting started in year 2000. So anyways, my friend and I started that. We would host shows out of homes. Even we would rent out the lobbies of hotels, and we would say, hey, we're going to have it here. And it would bring traffic into people to see their hotels. So it was a win-win, and it was awesome. Fast forward 3 years later, I had moved to Houston and I decided I wanted to take the business online.
Mhm.
So my partner and I split up and she stayed in Austin doing her thing. She's an amazing home decorator still to this day. She's awesome. Her name's Jenny. So shout out to her. And I took the business online and turned it into a personalized gifts boutique for women and children and home. So that whole era of
Oh,
monogramming everything. And I'm
yes.
obsessed.
Love
I
that.
was obsessed. A towel, a lunch kit, whatever it was, a bag, a necklace. If it had my
Yes.
initials on it, I loved it. And so I was doing something that I loved. Like I was genuinely obsessed with monogrammed goods. And so I turned that into a business. So for everyone listening, what this means for you is what are you obsessed with? What means something to you? What is important to you? What has saved you time, money, energy in your life? What has made you happy? That can be your business. Like you don't think that it can, but it can. So 2003, I started that business online. It went gangbusters pretty quick, which was insane. However, I had one small stumbling block, and that was I had to buy the goods that I was selling. So I was reselling, just like a physical store. I didn't make anything. I resold like all kinds of kids stuff, blankets, bags, purses, jewelry. Right. So I
Mhm.
had to buy from vendors. And so I went to what's called market. There's local markets around the nation in Atlanta and Dallas where buyers buy for their store. And so I went as this, how old was I? 27, 28-year old walking in. And I'm like, listen, I've just started an online business. And they looked at me.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
was crazy. They said, we don't do business with online sources.
Mm,
This is the era that I was in.
mm.
Side note too, Amazon was around, but they were known for books. Amazon was
Right.
known
That's
for books.
right.
Yes,
Mhm.
this was the era. So it was like some kind of Barnes and Noble on .com and some BAM Books a Million and like it was books. That was the new thing that people were buying online, right? So when I went to go buy for my store, people thought I was a little sketchy and a little
Mhm.
suspect. And they're like, what is she doing? We don't do that. And I'm like, listen, this is how young people are going. I mean, that's why we got to listen to the young people of today, right?
Yes.
Because they
Yes.
they even though we don't want to sometimes, they know the trends and things that are coming, right? So
Mhm.
anyways, fast forward then I'm growing my business, running it out of my home, raising my first child, second child. I then turned that one website, I took a niche of that website, which was collegiate baby themed gifts. So, like, if
Love
you
that.
think of any call it big major university around the nation, Texas Longhorns, Florida Gators, Ohio State, anything, we sold the onesies, pacifiers, blankets, all that. So I started a whole nother business from that one. So, side note for everyone listening, that one
Mhm.
business can turn into two. And you don't
Yep.
that you once you get the idea, it's kind of like a franchise, right? Once they coin the idea and get the processes down, it's not hard to replicate it, right? So
Mhm.
that's what I did. So I ran two online gift boutiques
Wow.
till about 2008. Right. And so then in 2018, my oldest had just graduated from college. So now their whole lives I've been working at home. Side note, my husband worked from home as well. He's in sales and technology sales. So we've worked at home together our entire lives and we still do. We still do. Crazy that
You
we're
were
not
ahead of your time. You were ahead of your time.
we're not divorced. We love each other and it's all worked out. We used to share an office. Now we don't. Got my own space. So that's good. But anyway, so in 2018, I was just having that weird feeling like my life is about to I'm embarking on a new era. I feel it. My daughter's going off to college or, I don't know if you felt like that too. Like
Mhm.
I've reached this new phase in my life. What am
Yeah.
I doing? What am I doing? And I remember starting to search for all kinds of information. Like, well, I was like, maybe I could start another business. But then I was like, no, should I go back to technology sales and do that? Um, and then I thought, I'm outdated. I haven't been in technology sales since 2000. So I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to start another business, but I don't know what. And I remember the moment sitting at my kitchen table
Mm.
bawling. I mean,
Mm.
just bawling. I don't know if y'all have had this where
Oh,
you have a
yeah.
meltdown.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, what am I doing with the rest of my life? Like, okay, am I going to have a business? What am I going to do? Am I selling stuff again? Am I selling services? What am I doing? And then after some investigation and everything that I went through and some digging deep into my soul, I started realizing, I've always wanted to be inspiring people somehow. I knew that. I've known that since I was little. I kind of wanted to be a news broadcaster or something, but that's not super inspiring because you're I don't want to say you're a robot. I don't mean it like that, but
Mhm,
just that
mhm.
you're having to regurgitate the news that's being given to you, right? You're not as
Right.
much getting to talk about things yourself. So anyways, then because I'd been looking stuff up online, an ad came up and it said, kickstart your public speaking business, which I didn't even know if I wanted to be a public speaker. I didn't know. I just knew I wanted to inspire people. It said by starting a podcast.
Mm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This is my way. I don't have to be on camera yet. I can just talk. I can just express myself. And I thought, this is
Mhm,
how I'm starting. So that's how my journey to podcasting began. And I kickstarted my podcast end of 2019.
mhm.
So we all know what happens a few months later, but I started it then and I said, I'm going to help women start business because that's what people ask me about anyways. So
Right.
for all of you listening, what is it that in your life people come to you for? What do they come to you for? Are you their therapist? Are they getting advice about how to start a business, which is what they did with me because everyone used to call me and be like, "How do I do this?"
Mhm.
Whatever it is for you to decorate, to help them with their landscaping, like what is it that you do that you help kids that need like a tutor? Maybe you specialize in that. I mean, the ideas are endless, but the onus is on you to really sit there and think, what is it that people come to me for already? And do I love that?
Mhm.
Could I make money doing that? Right?
Right.
And that's where you start. You start with that and you start with that inkling in your soul that says, I've always wanted to do XYZ. People
Mhm.
tell me this. You love being in front of people and talking to people and leading and speaking and inspiring and you're still on that path and your listeners are here today. You may love your career, but there may also be something tugging at you
Right.
and it's been there for a long time. I mean, one of my clients, Kim Aguilar, who,
Yes.
she's a landscape designer and consultant. And she said since she was little, she had loved landscaping because she used to do it with her mom, and her mom would teach her about plants, and they would go to the nursery. So I think about people like that, and it oftentimes
Mhm.
stems from when they were young.
Yes.
So everyone listen to your soul on that. Listen to your calling because that's what will propel you forward. So to finish off my story and get us to where we are today, I started with the podcast and I started offering one-on-one coaching and then I started offering some online, quick training that you can access instantly. And now I have my Grow Getters group, which is a group coaching program and we have, live group calls and all that and I'm getting to help them personally. So not
Right.
only am I getting to inspire through the podcast, that's my main marketing method, but I'm able to personally help people one-on-one in a group setting. And I have such a great group of ladies. So what's cool about that is it's evolved from just helping one person to having digital products to be
Mhm.
able to helping multiple at a time. So it's extremely rewarding. I love what I do. It doesn't ever feel like work. That is your goal as well. Again,
Mhm.
you can love your career, but you can also feel a calling for something
Yes.
more and you can do both.
Yeah.
You can do both. I'm proof. I loved my job at Dell. I have no qualms about it. I loved going every day. I loved managing people. I had men and women under, like, I loved my job. I loved sales. I loved money coming in. That's the truth. And so that's why I love business too. So you all have to think about that. What is it since you were young that you've loved? And also, what is it that people come to you for? Because
Right.
that is going to give you a clue, and that's your easiest path. That's your easiest. Now, you don't have to take the easy path. You can go learn a new skill and you can start a new business. You can buy a franchise. You can do anything.
Mhm.
But this is the easiest way, something you already know that you don't have to get trained on. So,
Exactly.
that's how I got here. And here we are 5 years later, podcasts and all of that. And I get to meet people like you. What a privilege. So,
Well, her story, that's another reason, Kimberly, I just knew you would be the perfect first guest on the pod because the way you explain it makes it feel like this dream really can be a reality. I know when I
100%.
found your podcast, again, like I said in the intro, I knew I was good at a couple of things. building those relationships, talking to people, but I wasn't really sure about, gosh, how would I even start if I wanted to do this, right? And
Right.
you guys, when I was a guest on Kimberly's show, one of the reasons she asked me to be a guest was she and I had that similar experience. So often people are always talking about wanting to start a business because they hate their job. But she and I were very similar in the fact that we actually loved our jobs. It was just that we were getting to the point where we just had this calling to, kind of spread our wings in a different way.
Yeah.
And you don't
Yeah.
normally hear that story. It's always somebody who's
Yeah.
so
You don't.
miserable at their job that
Hmm.
they're going to
Hmm.
just chuck it all. And
Right.
notice, guys, how she started by really tapping into what we discussed last week, which is that passion project. People were coming to her already. They saw her and knew that she was a successful businesswoman who wasn't like stressed out because she had so much joy in the businesses that she was running. And she was very forward thinking, ahead of her time. As she mentioned, you guys, do we even remember that Amazon was known for books and you couldn't
Right.
buy all the things that she was actually selling? That came years and years later, right? So she was ahead of her time, but she didn't start by thinking, oh, well, let me just be, some visionary, some revolutionary businesswoman and start something new. No, she started with what she loved to buy personally. She knew that she could do that and had the privilege of starting a business with a friend, which I just love that part of your
Yeah,
story,
it was so fun.
right?
So
And then
fun.
also notice that she had that crossroads moment. I've talked about that
Hmm.
before on the podcast. You guys, don't feel alone. Like Kimberly said, if you're sitting at the kitchen table and you're at this crossroads and you're emotional too, who
Yes.
hasn't
I
sat
know it.
there and just bawled and gone,
Yes.
what do I do
Yes.
next?
Hmm.
And, as a former teacher, I know I'm just paraphrasing here, but people have heard this before, right? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And it
Mm.
was like she was ready to do something differently, but then she opened her mind up to what that could be. Call it a God thing, call it the universe, call it whatever. But then this ad shows up. It gives me chills every time
I
she tells
know. I
the
know. I
story
know. I know. Thank you
because
for that
it's
ad.
just, it's right. It's true.
Whoever says that, by the way, who
It's
says I like these ads, except when you buy something cute that you find. But anyways,
right, right,
they work, I
exactly.
guess, right?
And I also love that, her family looked at her like, huh? And y'all, she did it anyway because she had that faith that, wait a second, this is something I love. She's
Yeah.
always talking about, oh, I'm not good on video. She's fabulous on video, but she
No.
sits there and she says, that wasn't her comfort zone. Let me speak to that. She started with something she knew she loved. And she started with just the podcast. Did you hear that? She didn't say she started a podcast, started a YouTube channel, started posting all the time on Instagram. I think what happens a lot, right, Kimberly? I've heard you
Yeah.
coach this, and this
Yeah.
is part of how I found Kimberly. When she and I first started working together, I had hired her with one-on-one coaching. And this, as soon as she started that Grow Getters program, I said, huh? What? And she was offering this opportunity back then, because this was a couple years ago, to be a lifetime member if you bought like for the whole year or whatever.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. I told my husband, Mark, I said, she's offering lifetime access to this program. Just get out your checkbook, okay? Because it's still a good deal. Okay. So we're doing this. But y'all, she's right because now of course, here lately, I haven't been able to join the Zoom calls, but just knowing that group is there for me when I can participate. And when she and I did our interview, y'all, I hadn't left my job yet. She was kind of part
Yeah.
of the beginning stages of me going, okay, I'm going to turn this passion project into something. And the book hadn't come out yet. She
Wow.
and I worked on getting everything set up, right? So you
Hmm.
guys, I'm here 50 episodes later with the wonderful Kimberly Brock who showed me how to do it. And because I knew I had her resources, she has a 16-step checklist. That was one of the first things I did. When I printed that off her website, and that is totally free, I looked at it and I remember talking about this in our interview back then, Kimberly. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got like 10 of these things already. I can do this. So
Yeah.
sometimes just
Yeah.
having somebody who has started before you, right?
Yeah.
List the steps because she knows this
Yep.
about me. I love me a checklist. Oh my gosh, I feel like I can do anything if I've got a clipboard, a pencil, a red pen. Like I want to check things off my to-do list, all those things. But it made it very doable, you guys, and less scary for me. So,
Yeah.
Kimberly is so right. When you just get to that crossroads, just think about what you're passionate about. She knew
Mhm.
she wanted to help people, and the podcast is what she did. So, I'm honing in on that, Kimberly, because that was one of my tips from last week as
Mhm.
I talked about find something, a platform that excites you that you feel you would be good at. So you are good at speaking. You knew you just wanted to do that. You
Right.
had that inkling for the news anchor
Yep.
so the podcast is very similar to doing that as
Right.
well. You didn't have to worry about trying to create a video, edit a video, put music,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And you could hire that out too.
Right.
So could you talk a little bit about that, Kimberly, that when you started and it was just you, your family's looking at you like you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for a minute, but you had the faith. I talk on
Yes.
this podcast all the time.
Yes.
Betting on yourself is never wrong.
Yes.
And I know a little bit about her family,
Mm.
and she does have great family support. But sometimes
I
you got to
know.
look at the husband and look at the kids and go, now, y'all, you're gonna have to let me do me.
Yep. Yeah.
I
No,
need you
it's
to
so
back me
true.
here.
It's
So can
so
you
true.
talk a little bit about what was that like? Like you probably were trying to do everything because one of the things I want to encourage listeners to do is listen to that inner voice. You had to kind of convince your family
Mhm.
just a little bit, and you did.
Mhm.
But then you also reached out to other folks at the beginning to help you, so you didn't have to do everything yourself, like the website and the
Right.
logo. And
Right.
could you
No,
speak a
that's
little
so
bit
true.
about that too, Kimberly?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, yeah, I decided to start the podcast and I was like, what am I doing? I joined a podcasting program. It was actually Seth Godin at the time. You know who
Yeah,
Seth Godin is?
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so great, fantastic author and he's amazing.
Hmm.
So, anyways, I uh, got in his program, learned how to do that at the time. I don't think he holds that program anymore. But then I got a business coach myself. So
Hmm.
I had one for 8 weeks. I had her for every week for 8 weeks. And that was, I knew I needed to do that because here's the kicker. I never did that with my other businesses. It was not really talked about or available. This was not talked about. This whole
Hmm.
coaching era, it was get a consulting agency or
Hmm.
figure it out yourself. So I'm like at the library reading books, back in the day, trying to figure out how to start my business. Right. So now I said, I'm getting a coach off the bat. So that saved me so much. And she helped me kind of hone in on what I was doing, my niche and all that stuff. And then I started working on the podcast and I thought, okay, I'm going to try to edit it myself. And I was in this like little dark room in our house that was the podcasting room, which I don't do that anymore and don't recommend because I started getting almost depressed in there because it was in there and
No.
it was like a cave. And my kids would come in and be like, Mom, this is like a cave. And it was like a storage closet slash
Oh,
podcast room. But y'all, I mean, it became successful from that room. So I shouldn't knock it, but it was not the most inspiring environment. Anyways, I started trying to edit my podcast myself and I'm technical, but I about threw my computer across the room. I was like, okay, not my skill set, not my zone of genius. Let's outsource this. I can create my website. I know how to start an email list. I knew how to do all those things, but I said, this thing I'm going to have to pay for. So right away, then I was paying for that. I paid for someone to pick out my colors and just create a basic logo, my She's Just Getting Started logo. So I paid for that because I know that I'm not a graphic designer,
Mhm,
right? So
mhm,
podcast editor, graphic person, coach, took a program for podcasting. And there's other things that I've probably thrown my money into online too. We've all done that, bought courses and all kinds of things. So I was doing all that. And then that's when I started feeling confident, but it took me a while. Like I was in
right,
that dark room recording my podcast almost in tears. Many times I would re-record and re-record, 4 times, 5 times, 3 times. I'm like, I have to get good at this. Like, what am I doing?
mhm,
This is hard and it was frustrating, but I worked through it. And eventually I came out and now it's like recording is a piece of cake. I can come up with an episode and talk, right? But that's the beauty in this process is that it feels messy and difficult and hard and just this mountain that you have to overcome, but it
mhm,
quickly passes. We know the phrase, this too shall pass. It
mhm,
passes and you get better at it. It's just like if you're learning a new skill, you wanted to run a marathon, you wanted to lose weight, whatever it is, you have to be doing it all the time. It's consistency and it's making it happen and getting help from those
yes,
who have gone before you,
mhm,
who
mhm,
can guide you along the way and say, don't step in this pitfall, this pit right here. Go this way. Be careful of this. Watch out for this. Do this. So for me, that's what saved me and got me really launched. I think that's what all of that, my business coach, everything helped me to have a podcast that was successful out of the gate. So that's been my bread and butter the whole time.
Yes.
That's my way. I like social media. I don't love social media. So I'm not on there all the time. There are some of my clients who are amazing, especially the younger ones, are amazing at social media. And that is their bread and butter. They get clients from that all day. I'm like, do that. Okay. Everything is not for everyone. You can't be all things to everyone either. Like my mother-in-law said, you can't be all things to all people.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. You just have to start, like Dawn said, pick a platform. And I will say my biggest piece of advice for those that are starting businesses is to start simple. It's 2 words. It's start simple. The biggest key, I know that sounds silly. You're like, duh, I probably knew that. A lot of you though will know that, but you won't follow it. You will complicate. You will try to do all the things for all people. You will try to be everything, all things. No, we start simple and you give yourself permission to
Right.
start simple.
Right.
You have a full-time job, most of you, or maybe you have a part-time career, whatever it is, you have to start simple. So give yourself this, that permission to say, I'm going to start simple and it's okay. It's not going to be perfect right now. It's not going to be my end all be all dream business right now, but it's going to be a start. And that's how
Right.
to get going.
Well,
So
and I think that helps your clients, whether they're your clients or your listeners on your podcast. I thought that was really inspiring to me when I first started to listen to you, was you kind of honing in on that. And in fact, you
mm,
guys, she talks about social media, but she even created a free Facebook group. So if you're not a member of her Grow Getters program, no problem. You could go to her Facebook group and get advice and support that way. So I just thought the way that Kimberly kind of brought her business to the surface, where she picked her platform, it was the podcast. She was recording in that dark little room and then eventually got out. But look, even though
right.
the circumstance, I think that's a great example, though, Kimberly, of even when the circumstances are not ideal, like here you were in this little spot in your house and
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yes.
very inspiring, you
No.
became successful anyway because what you were
Yes.
saying resonated with people. So don't spend all this money on some expensive website. You guys, she knows this story. I started by just creating my own website, and there are virtual platforms today that make things like this easier. But I hired my own business coach to show me how to create my own website. I think I used
Love it.
GoDaddy.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've upgraded my website a little bit, but when I first started, I used GoDaddy, created my own. In fact, one of my first coaching clients wanted me to create a website for her. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, this is not what I do full time. You're a friend of mine. I will create one for you because I just taught myself how to do it. But I actually earned money from teaching myself how to create my own website. I created my logo using Wix Logo Maker. I use our local Chamber of Commerce to print my first set of business cards that I designed in Canva. Canva
Love
is
it.
a software program that what, Kimberly, I think
Oh
is the
my
best
gosh.
$12.95 a
I
month. Oh my gosh, I still can't believe it's less than $13 a
I
month.
can't.
Seriously, people.
I had back in the day, I had to teach myself Photoshop
Mm,
to try to make any image for my website. And I would
yes.
take pictures and then, we didn't have the phones doing the pictures so y'all don't realize how easy it
Mhm.
is now. The
It really
Canva will
is.
save your life. It's a graphics program. You can make all your images. So yeah, it is the best $12 you will ever spend on your
Yes,
business per month, hands down. And
absolutely.
so, yes, there's ways to save yourself time and do things yourself.
What would you
Right.
say, Kimberly, would be just based on your experience of working with your clients? And then I want to make sure everybody knows how to find you and make sure we've covered other resources that you have.
Mhm.
But what would you say are the biggest obstacles you've seen that your clients have faced in trying to start their own businesses? Is it trying
Mm.
to do everything? Is it something else we haven't touched upon?
That's a great question. There are many things. One thing, the first thing is they don't believe that it can happen for them. And you
Hmm.
touched on that earlier, this is possible for them. They don't believe that. And number two, that they get stuck in overthinking mode,
Hmm.
overthinking every single thing.
Hmm.
And number three, stuck in analysis paralysis. So then
Yes.
they're analyzing, should I be spending money on this? Should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? And they never make a decision and everything gets drawn out. So those are the big things that I see that get in their way. Right now, sometimes people want to start a business, but they can't come up with the idea. And so that can be a struggle as well. And so if
Hmm.
you're stuck in the idea stage, if you're one of those people, then you really do have to take, based on what I talked about earlier, about really digging into who you really are, understanding your personality and your God-given gifts. And I actually have some free resources for that to understand your entrepreneurial gifts and things like that. But anyways, that's a side note. But that's what we have to do. I took everything that I did and put it into free resources and also paid resources that help people get past those things, because we've got to stop the, analysis paralysis. We've got to stop overthinking everything, and we've got to just take some action and move forward. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. You
mm,
guys know I preach about that on this podcast, because what's interesting is that what Kimberly helps people with in terms of helping people start their own businesses, a lot of those obstacles that she has to coach her clients through are the exact same obstacles I have to coach my clients through, but on the career side, because I'll
mm,
have someone
mm,
who's stuck in their career and they go over what they should have said at that meeting over and over and over
mm,
again, instead of just getting over that and moving forward and making a
mm,
decision. So remember, guys, we talk about perfectionism on this podcast a lot.
oh yeah,
We
that
talk
too.
about imposter syndrome. We just did an
Mhm,
episode on that. So really know your value, and kind of going back to what she said. Notice she's a coach who's hired her own coaches. I'm always a little. I'm going to get preachy here for just a second. If you're in the coaching or service business and you've never hired your own coach, I'm a little worried about that, because you need to believe in coaching yourself so much that you too reach out for help. Because if you don't,
right,
you're going to get burnt out. And then also, you might be struggling with that perfectionism or that inability to ask for help.
right,
And so
right.
we have to, definitely do that ourselves as coaches, that work-life balance and those kinds of
Yep.
things. So yeah, I think
Oh, that's so true.
yeah, definitely understand exactly where you're coming from there, Kimberly. Not surprised that your clients would be struggling with that a little bit.
Right, right.
One other question, and then I want to make sure that everyone can find where you are. And you mentioned the idea stage. You guys, when I found Kimberly, I think I mentioned I had downloaded her 16-step checklist, but then I saw that she had lots of other free resources. We have free resources. Don't forget to go to drdonshoptalk.com. Lots of free resources there. Kimberly does too. So I want to make sure that you guys can get to her website, because she actually has a workshop on how to create the idea if you're stuck in that idea stage. But then remember, going back to what she said about, think about what people are asking you for. That's
Mhm,
already a
mhm,
natural fit. And
mhm,
not to say
mhm.
you couldn't buy into a franchise or, do something like that, but it
Right.
definitely feels really natural just to kind of start with what you're great at and what people say
Yeah.
you're great at, right? So Kimberly, tell everybody where they can find you, and let's make sure that we also hit upon any other ways that you're currently helping people. I mentioned that you do help people start their own podcast as well,
I
if they're
do.
interested in that.
I do. Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much, Dawn. So yeah, all my information is at kimberlybrock.com. So you can just go there. She'll have the link below. There's a big pink button on there that says get the free resources. So you can get all the freebies. I can help you in the idea stage. There's a free Ikigai guide. I don't know if y'all have heard of Ikigai, but it's like a Venn diagram, and it's a Japanese term that means reason for being. And it helps you with that, to like figure out like, what's my purpose? What's my business purpose? What am I doing? How do I match up my passion, skills, and expertise? And like Dawn mentioned, I also have the 16-step checklist for starting your business. So if you want to know what the steps are, or you're starting now and you want to make sure like Dawn did and just go through and check them off, I've got that. But then I've got paid resources for your business idea, creating a simple business plan to get that
Mhm.
vision out of your head and onto a piece of paper, then a whole game plan for starting your business. It's called my Just Getting Started program, and then Grow Getters, which is for those that are ready to grow. So if you're about to open, or you're open already and you'd love a community of women, you love coaching, getting help, then, and I give you the strategies to do that for how to grow. So I do that, plus most importantly, one-on-one coaching. So I
Mhm.
offer that for any phase that you're in. And if you want to start your podcast, I have a program for that, and I can help you with that in hourly coaching as well. And people do that. So super nice, because then you can just knock stuff out. So anyways, that's what I
Absolutely.
offer. And then my podcast again is the She's Just Getting Started podcast. And if you're on social, it's Start with Kimberly Brock are my handles. on Facebook and Instagram. And thank you for letting me share that, Dawn.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. As Kimberly said, I'm going to include all those links in the show notes. And for those of you watching us on YouTube, it will be included in that description box as well. Also, notice that Kimberly pointed out, where you can find her on social media. So one of the things that we always say here on the podcast, we want to make sure you guys are loving this kind of content. So if you are watching us on YouTube, be sure to comment below. Let us know what strategies of Kimberly's you might be putting in place. And also notice that it's different types of levels. For example, what if you've already started your business and you're like, oh man, I wish I had heard about Kimberly before I started. When I kind of found out about Kimberly, I had already started some things. I hadn't actually launched the business yet, but even if I had launched it, she has different programs for different phases of your business. So I just wanted to make that clear. If you are excited to explore the idea of starting your own business, definitely reach out to Kimberly. She's a great resource, and understand, even if you've been in business for years, she might be a great resource to help you grow your business if you're kind of feeling stuck and just need that inspiration of other women. If I didn't say this before, Kimberly does work exclusively with women and trying to help them grow those businesses. So that's another reason I knew she'd be the perfect first guest on our monthly motivation, as we're trying to find those amazing professional women that are helping other women. Kimberly, as we wrap up, is there anything else we didn't touch upon? Any other bonus tip that you could give our listeners? I think we covered a lot, but I always like to ask that question.
We did. We filled their cup today. I hope we filled your cup, but it would be what I said in the beginning, if you know that you're meant for more than where you are today, then follow that. Follow that, because that is where you're going to find fulfillment. It is. You're going to find fulfillment and meaning. So promise me, all of Dawn's listeners, all of you, that if you feel it in your soul, know that this is possible for you, and to follow it, and just take that first next step. So it may be, reaching out and getting one of my free resources. It may be talking to Dawn. It may be finding another coach, a mentor in your life, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Take that next step. Of course, I'd be honored to help you, but just know that that's really my goal, is to get you to take the next step, wherever that takes you. So
wonderful.
That would be what I had to say.
Yes. Thank you so much. Preach, sister, preach. I love it. I love it. Well, you guys, as we wrap up, thank you again for joining us for this very special edition of the Career Woman's Secret Playbook podcast, episode 50. I can't believe we've gotten to 50.
So much fun. I loved it. I loved it.
So excited to celebrate with you today. And as we say at the end of every episode, you guys, our motto here at Shop Talk is this: if you're not having a fantastic day, don't forget, you've got the power to make it one. Till next time, ladies, we will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Dawn.
You're amazing. Next episode. Thank you, Kimberly. I know our episode is over, but this is just the beginning. If you're ready to take action but don't know where to start, just head over to drdawnshoptalk.com for lots of free resources, ways to work together, and for even more. Subscribe to the Dr. Dawn Shop Talk YouTube channel. Remember, ladies, you don't have to take this journey alone. I've got you covered. Till next time.